Welcome back to the Temple of Technology. I am your host, Scott James Magner, the idiot with a microphone. It's time for another episode of So Here's the Deal, the RS Entertainment webcast where I explore my vast media collection and talk about what each piece means to me and my friends. In this episode, we're continuing our David Lynch Film Festival with another episode of Twin Peaks Season 2. And we're back in the collaboration room with my co-host and co-conspirator, Julie McGallard. I would ask Julie how she's feeling, but in the pre-show she told me that she's have a bitter frog in her throat. So that's a stupid thing to ask someone you know is sick. But
I hope it'll make me sound like Marlena Dietrich, but really it just makes me sound like a frog.
all right, so we're going to talk about episode 10, also known as The Man Behind the Glass, and also known as Twin Peaks Season 2, Episode 3. This is a fine episode. It is written by... I just lost the narrative. All right. It is written by... Gosh darn it. There we go. I'm an idiot with a microphone, but also I'm an idiot with a mouse. So it was written by Leslie Linka Glatter, a name that you'll see a lot here in Twin Peaks and in a lot of media from the 90s, and directed by... Oh, did I get that wrong? No, it's directed by Leslie Linka Glatter and is written by Robert Engels. Both names you will see a lot here in Twin Peaks. So this will be notes by David Lynch, executive produced by David Lynch, but this is not a David Lynch episode. However, it feels like a David Lynch episode for a lot of it, and that's good for us in our examination of the content. This I mentioned in our last episode that the ratings only go down from the season premiere, and they did again. They went down by many hundreds of thousands of people. There was 14.4 for the first episode, and then it's 13.7 here for Man Behind the Glass, which debuted on October 13th, 1990. It had moderate critical review, but fans were doing other things. You know, they were watching the World Series, or they were knitting or churning butter. They're doing a lot of things besides watching Twin Peaks. And an episode that not a lot really goes on. But this episode is important to us here on the webcast because we watched this episode last week intending to record 2 episodes of So Here's the Deal back to back. And we got so excited during our expanded coverage that we covered a lot of some big plot reveals for this episode in the previous episode, kind of conflating them because they were seamless. And so I think as serialized television go, this episode really succeeds because I literally couldn't tell the difference between 2 episodes of Twin Peaks that just seemed like one big long episode of Twin Peaks. And I thought that was pretty good for us in what we're doing here, examining things. In our overview here, we're talking about what Twin Peaks means to us. And Twin Peaks, to me, means it's crazy, kooky television from the 90s, but more specifically, this is where David Lynch learned to make movies. And a lot of Twin Peaks is set up as a movie split into 2 parts, like a movie of the week thing. And when we get to Twin Peaks Return in 2050, we'll see that everything was cut intentionally as 2-hour movies and then split up as they go through. So it's an interesting departure from how television was made then in the United States. However, in the United Kingdom and in most of Europe, television was movies all the time, and they are always broken up into two parts. And so when you see series X or Y, it's a larger thing that has been chopped up into smaller chunks to broadcast on over the air, as it were. It was over the air then, because not a lot of cable was going on in 1990. Fun facts.
Although we did have a videotape recording.
We did have videotape
Because
recording.
I remember there were at least a couple of episodes of Twin Peaks that I didn't watch live. I watched shortly after they had aired on my friend's on a tape that a friend had made.
Ooh, if you remember what they were, when we come to them, make sure and bring that up. Because
Yeah, yeah. I'll have to see if I have any kind of notes that'll um let me remember that at all. Because I think that I think it might have happened because doesn't Twin Peaks eventually start being aired on like Saturday or
oh yeah,
some
they
ridiculous?
we'll get
Yeah.
to that when they start shuffling
Yeah.
around because they had given up. They had already paid for the episodes. They were going to broadcast them all, which in 1990 was a big deal, right? Because you get to 1990, oh, let's say 7 or 1998 or the early 2000s, when a network decides that a show isn't going to do well, they'll just start dropping episodes and airing them out of order. So they had committed to Twin Peaks. ABC had committed to Twin Peaks and was going to show it no matter what, and they did. Right. We are watching digital archives of my Twin Peaks A to Z Blu-ray box set. Some of these episodes appear on 4K discs, but this is a Blu-ray that we are watching digital copy of. So in glorious 1080p. And I brought up in the past that I almost don't want to watch it in 480p. On my server, I kept the 480 rips of the DVDs and not the Blu-rays because there's something warmer and nicer about that old broadcast format. It wasn't a lot of this wasn't shot on film. It was shot on video because it was cheaper to make. And what you'll see in a lot of shows, the difference between a film segment and a video segment is stark in contrast. But Twin Peaks looks the same almost throughout in all the shots that you've got. So let's see, what else have we got here? All right, in owing to Julie's Froggy Visitor, I am going to read several Wikipedia summaries about this episode. This is an episode that, believe it or not, does not have its own wikipedia.org article. It only has a thumbnail on the grand list of Twin Peaks episodes. And so I'm going to read that thumbnail, and then I'm going to go back to the Twin Peaks Wiki, the source of all truth, and read their much more expanded coverage. And you'll see why we prefer the Twin Peaks Wiki summaries to the Wikipedia summaries, but they're not nearly as amusing. All right, so here is our summary. Cooper discovers a piece of paper bearing the letter B under Ronette's fingernail, matching the R under Laura's fingernail and the T under Teresa Banks, the previous victim of the same killer. Donna meets Harold Smith, an agoraphobiac. They could have just said, all right, words matter. Wikipedia, they matter. An agoraphobiac and one of Laura's Meals on Wheels deliveries. Leland reveals Bob's real name is Robertson, a man who lived near his childhood summer house who used to flick matches at him and ask, "Do you want to play with fire, little boy?" Cooper realizes the letters are attempting to spell Robertson. Blackie drugs Audrey into a comatose state. Jacques' older brother, Jean Renault, schemes to use her to lure Cooper to One-Eyed Jack's to kill him and avenge Jacques. Shelley refuses to testify about Leo's involvement in the mill fire, leading Cooper to suspect her disability scheme. Gerard, selling Truman's shoes, sees the poster of Bob and is overcome with lightheadedness. Realizing James and Maddie are falling for each other, Donna laments at Laura's grave that things are more complicated with her dead. In a trance state, Jacoby identifies Leland as Jacques' killer, leading Truman to arrest Leland. and Donna discovers a secret diary of Laura's hidden at Harold's house. So it's far more concise, far shorter. It leaves out even more than a Wikipedia.org summary usually does. But Julie, how would you rate that thumbnail?
Pretty accurate, actually. I mean,
The shorter
I don't think
it gets, the easier
yeah.
it is for them not to screw it up.
Yeah, it doesn't have any of those inexplicable putting things out of order or implying that something caused something when it didn't, or that sort of thing. So yeah, I found it somewhat coherent.
Right. I am going to the Twin Peaks Wiki. If you're watching this on YouTube, I'm going to put a link to the Twin Peaks Wiki in our description to make sure that you've got it squared away. So it's a much longer one here. All right. And after the break, I'll also read Margaret Lanterman's commentary to spare Julie's voice. I'm not nearly as good as the log lady as Julie is. Let me tell you that flat out. But I'll try. Harry helps orderlies restrain Ronette in the hospital. Cooper and Albert enter. Cooper takes a sample from her fingernail, a small piece of paper containing the letter B. Cooper tells Harry and Albert about his visit from the giant. I already like this summary better. Donna visits Harold Smith, who offers her his hospitality. He has many flowers in his living room, and he says he sent the letter for her to investigate Meals on Wheels. He says he is a shut-in because he cannot go outside, and that he was a mystery in Laura's life. He asks Donna to place one of his orchids on her grave for him, and walks out to his greenhouse. Donna tries to pull a slip of paper from the bookshelf, but Harold interrupts her with a lady slipper orchid. Harold says Donna is every bit as lovely as Laura said she would be, and she takes the orchid and tells Harold that she will be back. At the station house, aka Sheriff's office, Cooper stands in front of a blackboard with the letters found under the girl's fingernails, and the names of the people who have seen Bob, who are Maddie, Mrs. Palmer, Cooper, and Ronette, and a picture of Bob. He says the lines between the names are a psychic link that will lead them to him. Harry asks about the giant, and Albert dismisses it, then reports that the cocaine found in James's gas tank matched the cocaine found in Jock's car and Leo's house, meaning that Leo framed James. The letter B found under Ronette's finger was cut from an edition of Flesh World. They also used AP Style on Flesh World, which makes me like Twin Peaks Wiki that much more. He also says that he sent a picture of Bob to law enforcement agencies across the country and came up with nothing. He reports that Cooper was shot with a Walther PPK, which he notes to be James Bond's gun. On his way out, Albert insults Harry again, so Harry grabs Albert's collar and says that the last time he punched Albert, he felt sorry about it, but the next time will be a pleasure. Albert states his philosophical convictions and says that he loves Sheriff Truman. We'll get into that later, because it's a really good speech. At the front of the station house, Cooper tells James he can go home, but to stop trying to figure everything out himself. Lucy tries to find words that use the letters B, T, and R. The foppish Dick Tremaine then comes in to take Lucy to lunch. Leland enters and talks to the officers about the picture of Bob. He says that he knows him. When he was a little boy, his grandfather had a summer home, and Bob was his neighbor. He lived in a white house, and he thinks the name was Robertson. Cooper sends Hawk to the lake to investigate. Leland says that Bob used to flick matches at him and ask, "Do you want to play with fire, little boy?" Lucy and Dick sit at the counter of the Double R. Richard talks about his method for memorizing customer orders, and Lucy asks why he has not called in 6 weeks after 3 months of going out every week, and after their night on a bed in Horm's Home Furnishings. She then reveals that she is pregnant. James and Madeline sit at the diner, the former asking about Donna's smoking. James tells about Donna's visit to the prison and how she seemed to want him through the bars. Madeline holds James's hand, and Donna enters. Misunderstanding the gesture, she tells him how much she liked Harold and storms out. Blackie and Emery tie up Audrey, and Emery makes a video of her. Emery and Blackie argue over whether their plan will work. At the station house, the one-armed man shows Harry his selection of boots. He sees the picture of Bob and reacts strongly. Shelley meets Harry and Cooper in the station, and they ask for a statement regarding Leo, but she refuses to say anything against him. Cooper escorts her out the door and tells Harry he believes her reason to be an insurance scam, but he is not sure who thought it up. The one-armed man struggles with his medicine in a bathroom stall and has a seizure. He talks to Bob and says he is after him now. Cooper follows a marching band out of the hotel elevator and tells Ben about Audrey's phone call, asking if there's trouble at home. Ben tells Cooper that Audrey has gone missing before and warns him to keep away from Audrey. An Asian man eavesdrops on their conversation and follows Cooper. Audrey lies on her bed. A man named Jean pulls a veil from her face and gives her a caramel and a shot. A woman stands nearby holding his tools. Blackie plays a surveillance tape of Cooper at the casino, and Emery informs her that Cooper is in the FBI. Jean Renault stands behind them with the woman, Blackie's sister. Jean says he will be the middleman for Audrey's ransom, so Ben will never know that Blackie and Emery are behind it. In exchange, Emery and Blackie will bring him the man responsible for his brother's death, Agent Cooper. Jean says they cannot let the girl live. Cooper enters Harry's office with coffee and donuts. Harry reports that Josie called, saying she will be back the next day. Harry asks to see her first, alone, and Cooper permits it. Hawk reports that he found a boarded-up white house by the lake and is trying to discover whose it is. Harry asks them if they have seen Gerard, the one-armed man, as he never came back from the bathroom. Cooper searches the bathroom and finds Gerard's needle and medicine. Without chemicals, he points, Cooper says, and wants to find the one-armed man. A hospital orderly cuffs Nadine to her bed. Dr. Hayward tells Big Ed that she ripped through 2 pairs of leather restraints the previous night, and that her adrenaline levels are high. He tells Ed to talk or sing to her. As Ed sings, Nadine grips his hand, sits up, and snaps the cuffs. She claps spasmodically and chants a cheer. She begins talking to Ed, seeming to think she is 18 and about to try out for the cheerleading squad. Cooper and Harry enter Jacoby's room at the hospital. His wife, a young Hawaiian woman, rubs his feet. Cooper helps to hypnotize Jacoby and then walks him through Jacques' murder. Jacoby says he knows the murderer. Donna brings the orchid to Laura's grave and tells Laura about her new relationship with James. She says that she loves James, but it is a mess, and that Laura's problems are still the center of her life. James visits Madeline to say that he cannot find Donna and that his mother came home. They almost kiss, then hold each other. Donna finds them and suddenly leaves, with James chasing her out. Bad phrasing. Leland comforts Maddie, who is upset that people think she is like Laura. Cooper and Harry wait in the doorway and arrest Leland for the murder of Jacques Renault. Harold answers a knock at his door. It's Donna, who tells Harold that she is tired of being patient with James. Harold comforts her and leaves to get her a drink. Donna strokes a flower and opens a notebook, the diary of Laura Palmer. So easily 5 times as long as the Wikipedia thumbnail, but badly written. It's clearly a fan-written document. It jumps all over the place. It is not consistent in its phrasing or its naming of characters. And one of the things I really like about Wikipedia is that it also follows style, and it'll introduce someone by their full name and then a shorter name afterwards, and it doesn't shift between them. So I'm not slagging on TwinPeaksFandom.com, the Twin Peaks Wiki. It's simply annoying to read through something like that and not want to edit it. Because that's kind of my job, is to edit things. But what'd you think of this summary, Julie?
It was long.
It was very long.
That was my feeling, is it wasn't and this is actually a problem I have with a lot of Wikipedia summaries of not just Twin Peaks, but like everything, is that it lays out the events, but somehow everything sounds really boring.
Yeah.
It just makes everything sound so dull. And that's kind of, Yeah, this kind of had that feel about it where it completely failed to express to me why I should care that any of that happened.
Yep. It is. It wasn't my favorite one, but I did think it was a good overall summary. It covered all the salient plot points. It just gave no emotional weight to any of them. So that's why we're here, to talk about our first impressions. But there's somebody else we need to talk to first. Your friend and ours, the Log Lady. So let's check in with her on our YouTube video, and then we'll be right back with our first impressions.
Letters are symbols. They are building blocks of words which form our languages. Languages help us communicate. Even with complicated languages used by intelligent people, misunderstanding is a common occurrence. We write things down sometimes, letters, words, hoping they will serve us and those with whom we wish to communicate. Letters and words, calling out for understanding.
In First Impressions, we'll talk about experiencing the piece for the first time, how it bears up over repeated viewings, and general chat about the episode.
We're back. The Log Lady had a great deal to say, and I'm just going to repeat that for those of you listening along at home. Letters are symbols. They are building blocks of words which form our language. Languages help us communicate. Even with complicated languages used by intelligent people, misunderstanding is a common occurrence. We write things down sometimes, letters, words, hoping they will serve us and those with whom we wish to communicate. Letters and words, calling out for understanding. Music. Now we can watch Twin Peaks. Thanks, Groot. I have other logs. I have actual logs downstairs, but Groot. I am Groot.
There's a kind of a traditional Christmas sweet that is made in the shape of a log. I'm not sure you'd want to, cuddle it because it's, covered in frosting, but
Yeah, that's not my first thing.
we should try different kinds of logs. Cheese
Yeah.
logs.
Cheese logs. We can have a cheese log. Just hold up a cheese log like this and talk at the cheese log. My cheese log has something to say to you. My Tootsie Roll log has something to say to you. My Toblerone has something to say. Now we gotta do it. Now we have to search for various things that could be logs. I'll even bring my cat in here and pretend my cat is a log, because that's kind of how he sleeps.
Some cats are logs, some cats are
Well, there's certainly
water.
lumps on a rock. All right. So, what were your first thoughts on this viewing of Man Behind the Glass? And if you can recall, your impression of it in 1990, that would help as well.
Yeah, my 1990 impression, I think I remember it like it hadn't really lost me yet. Like later on in season 2, I would start to have that kind of like, where is this going? But this episode, on a rewatch, the thing that jumps out at me is the characters that we meet for the first time. Because there's actually several.
Yep.
And I think after so first, Harold Smith.
Yep.
Harold Smith is kind of a babe. I mean, I don't know, but he's let's see, I found the AV called him the ultimate pinup for agoraphobia fetishists. But I mean, seriously though, he is a really appealing character. And I do seem to remember finding his character really appealing, really intriguing, wondering what we were going to find out about him. Um, we also meet two slime balls.
Yeah.
Um, we meet Lucy's guy, who I can never remember the name
Dick
of.
Tremaine.
Dick Tremaine, that's it. Yeah, we meet that guy who uh, is, I mean, he is kind of hilariously awful, but he's also very broadly cartoony. And that's actually, as I recall, my biggest objection to season two was that the like Lynchian weirdness, and like I think of the Lynchian weirdness as being things like in the background, there's a barbershop quartet convention going on, and that's a little goofy. Or people singing songs about mares and oats, that kind of stuff. But season two would start to have these things that were more cartoony, like broadly comic, and they were still absurd, but they seemed to be absurd in the wrong way. And I think that Tremaine is the first hint of that. Um, where he's ridiculous and maybe a little bit funny, but in a way that feels like it comes in from, I don't know, some cheesy sitcom.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's just a weird
and
detour away from our fight light versus darkness. Here's this interpersonal soap opera drama, right? And
yeah,
it's not. And the thing is, so she says it's been weeks since he has talked to her. And if you add up the days, that's the entirety of season one. Right? So her
yeah,
affair with Dick, or rather even even if it was an affair, because they were on a Andy was they were she was Andy were on a break, and then they weren't.
yeah.
Right? Now, did she go back to Andy because Dick Tremaine stopped calling her? I don't know, but the timing is right there. And so he dumped her after he slept with her, and then she went back to Andy and started sleeping with Andy. But Andy says he can't have kids. And then Dick Tremaine going, ooh, what? Huh? What?
Who, me?
Is that where babies come from? Huh? Might as well be Bobby at that point. Because God knows Bobby's not using a fucking condom. But yeah, Dick Tremaine is not great. He's not great, but he's a buffoon. And in his slimeballery and in his showing up at the sheriff's office, not the station house, the sheriff's office, he is just kind of, I'm here to take Lucy to lunch. And then everyone's going, the fuck, who are you?
Who are
And
you?
yeah, Lucy won't say anything about him. She just goes, I'm going to lunch now, and leaves, right? And so you got to believe Andy's sitting out there in one of the Broncos with his binoculars watching them. We don't see that in the episodes. We can only assume it happens. But
Headcanon.
I don't want to say Andy's no dummy. Andy's a simple man. But he's a simple in that his emotions are raw and right there at the top. And that's an expanded coverage topic, not a first impression topic. But when I watched this for the first time, it was like, who the fuck is this guy? And wow, this is okay. Now, did I miss him in the first season? Did I need to pay attention to this? And I didn't have the internet back then, or rather, I had the internet, but it was for work. It wasn't for Wikipedia or fan sites. Even though it was, 8 some years had passed, right? And so I could just call Julie and ask her about Twin Peaks if I needed to, or one of my other friends. It wouldn't be as involved of a deep dive where you could lose 3 hours going click, 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 click. Dick Tremaine and everything that's going on about that actor. So, but yeah, it was really, really interesting to see that. But then we get your other sleazeball, Jean Reno, who is a truly terrifying actor, right? I have seen him in so many things, playing so many bad guys, that the one or two times that he is really playing a good guy, it just seems ridiculous, right? But it's the actor is Walter Oakwitz, and he can be sometimes confused for Leon Rippey, He is not Leon Rippey. Leon Rippey was a guy in LA Law. Walter Ockowitz has played bunch of bad guys, and he has that menacing sneer and that look about him that makes me just smile every time he's on screen. And then the first thing he does is whack up Audrey with heroin.
You know, actually, him kind of sort of seductively force feeding her caramel.
Yeah.
That scene is so, I mean, it's a good scene because it makes me go, ah, caramel. I mean, it is so, everything, it's just like every single thing about it oozes slime. Ugh.
Yeah.
Anyway, yes. So, I mean, good on the actor. Because I think that's the impression I'm meant to have. So
Yeah, and then he is. Oh yeah, okay, I'm a bad guy. I'll broker your kidnapping, and I am gonna kill Agent Cooper because my brother is dead. And it's like, wow, all right, you're not even looking for proof. You're just assuming that Agent Cooper did it because he's with the FBI, and clearly the FBI just runs around murdering people.
well,
Maybe they did
I mean,
in 1990,
well,
but it's not as plausible as it would be
I mean,
today.
to be fair to him, the reason his brother was killed is because he crossed the border and was arrested,
Yeah,
and he was killed while he was in custody. So,
yeah,
so blaming Agent Cooper isn't crazy, especially since Cooper himself doesn't yet, well, at the beginning of the episode anyway, doesn't yet know who killed
yeah.
his brother.
They do not.
Um, Although speaking of that, the scene with Dr. Jacoby, the fourth, I might be missing one, but the other character we meet for the first time and last time is Jacoby supposedly has a wife
Yep.
who does seem to speak English, but does not speak very much of it. I think she says maybe 5 words. I don't know. It's
Yeah, 5 might be a stretch.
5 might be a
I think,
stretch.
and hello
Yeah.
might be one of those words.
Yeah, yeah. And she's very cute and seems nice. But where did she come from? Where did she go? We never see her again.
Yeah.
And she apparently comes into the hospital with like an entire like tiki bar in her bag somehow that she's just set it all up. But
Now, Julie
yeah,
has a tiki bar in her home, so she knows what she's talking about.
I know how to set up a mobile tiki bar, and yeah, so props for that. But gosh darn it, I just wish she was actually a character.
Yeah.
It's a missed opportunity, and it's an example of something we've talked about is that Twin Peaks. David Lynch was not always great with people who were not white. He was not always great with women in terms of like, his central women tend to be vivid and complete and interesting characters. But when it comes to, I don't know, the general universe of Twin Peaks, it's easy to notice that a walk-on man tends to be a little bit like they don't tend to have as many, male characters who are like, we just see this guy this one time and then he disappears and we never see him again.
I mean, there's the ancient busboy.
He comes back.
I
think he does. He comes back, I think.
All right.
Anyway. But
yeah.
But I want to know more about his wife. Again, Twin Peaks is not on the coast. Like it's not like being in Seattle where you can assume that like, there's this Pacific Rim connection. It's like Twin Peaks is where it's located is like a 6-hour drive from Seattle.
Right, but clearly they no one has any problems with Josie Packard. The quote Asian man who's been hanging out throughout season 2 so far. Doesn't even have a name, but he can just wander around the Great Northern and nobody says
Oh,
boo.
well, no, actually, what I'm questioning is where did she come from, like, sort of literally? Like,
No, yeah,
did she live at Jacoby's house? Because we
I
didn't see any indication that he lived with a wife.
yeah, he's very bachelor house, and then my wife, and I think is intentionally jarring, right? Where it says, "Oh,
Yeah.
this is my wife," and then everyone's just supposed to assume that it is his wife. It could not be. It could be, a foot massager that he claimed was his
Yes.
wife, so that she could come in and give him a massage.
You
Well,
know,
it's in the
that is
hospital.
actually a lot better explanation than that she's his wife who he's like if she's his wife because otherwise the hospital wouldn't let him bring in somebody to do,
Massage.
Hawaiian style massage.
Yeah. But he clearly had no problem sleeping with Laura, right? And so that's not a very strong marriage, or it's an amazingly strong marriage. That she will let him sleep with 18-year-olds. But
Yeah.
again, the crazy mystery of Dr. Jacoby is that we don't even know where he came from. He's just
No,
kind of
we
there.
don't.
Why does Twin Peaks have that level of healthcare? We've got a
One
licensed
psychologist who's
hypnotherapist.
crazy. I
Yeah,
mean,
one
that kind of
psychologist
fits
is crazy.
actually.
Yeah, sure, yeah. Maybe he's been in the woods too long, making too many mobiles outside. Yeah, it's yeah. I don't even think she had a name. Uh Maybe see what Wikipedia has to say about that, but it says is married to a Hawaiian woman, Aolani, who's only seen once. So she has a name. Whether
Oh, I
that's
think he calls her that. I think he does give her a name. I think he does. I think he. That sounds familiar now. I think he tells everybody what her name is.
cool. All right. Okay. So our first impressions generally positive about this episode. I don't think it's as good as Coma, but then again, as I said in our previous edition of So Here's the Deal, Coma epitomizes Twin Peaks Season 2 for me. It is exactly what Twin Peaks Season 2 should be and continue the through line all the way throughout. And this is a giant drop off that cliff in quality and plotting and direction for Man Behind the Glass. Now, when I first saw it, 1998, it was just fine. I didn't tell the difference between the two. But then again, I was drunk all the time. So maybe beer makes Twin Peaks better. I can't say for sure anymore because I only do one of those things, and it's watch Twin Peaks. But I didn't take a lot of notes on this episode, but the ones I did are mostly expanded universe quotes and stuff that I want to talk about. But one thing I do desperately want to talk about is Albert Rosenfeld. So, man, is that guy a prick? He is a not nice person. And last episode, Andy stood up and shook his finger at him in an uncharacteristic display of bravado and macho. And then Albert just kind of went and went on speaking as if Andy hadn't even done that. But this week, Sheriff Truman picks him up, slams him in the wall, and says, I'm not going to hit you by accident. I'm going to beat the shit out of you. And then Albert gives this speech, which to me is peak Albert, which is what caught my attention 100% about Albert when I watched this for the very first time. Now you listen to me. While I will admit to a certain cynicism, the fact is that I am a naysayer and a hatchet man in a fight against violence. I pride myself in taking a punch, and I'll gladly take another, because I choose to live my life in the company of Gandhi and King. My concerns are global. I reject absolutely revenge, aggression, and retaliation. The foundation of such a method is love. I love you, Sheriff Truman. And then Harry just kind of lets him go and walks out of the room. It's like, Peace out. Drop my microphone. I'm gone. And then Dale Cooper turns and says, Albert's path is a strange and difficult one. Which is really, it struck me, right? Because Albert scoffed openly at Buddhism and transcendentalism in the previous episode. But in this episode, he's espousing Sufi morals. And so those two things aren't far apart, right? And if he chooses to walk a path of nonviolence, he was calling Truman out in season 1 and saying, well, do you want to go? Do you want to go? And it seems so jarring for him to deliver this speech, but it seems so Albert for him to deliver this speech. And from here on out, every time I see Albert, if he's not walking the path of that path and rejecting revenge, aggression, and retaliation, I'm going to fucking hammer him on this podcast, because those are really, really important words for a character to deliver, and they have to bring it. And the writer isn't always going to be the same, and the director isn't always going to be the same, but they've shown us this is who Albert Roosevelt is supposed to be. And I want to see that character. I want to see him do a lot of stuff, Albert Roosevelt stuff. And I don't think I'm going to get to. I haven't watched ahead in this season as much as I want to, right? And I've only seen many of these episodes once or twice. So, but that for me is a first impression that I want to have pay off, because he's willing to take a punch to prove that he is a better man than Sheriff Truman. But he is not a better man than Sheriff Harry Truman. Sheriff Harry Truman is a warrior against darkness. He has chosen to sacrifice his life in the fight against the evil that lives out in the woods, not even knowing what that evil is. And Albert hasn't done that. But Albert is part of Gordon Cole's spooky FBI, the same way that Dale Cooper is part of Gordon Cole's spooky FBI. And so Albert's seen some shit. He just chooses to approach everything with, I'm a scientist, these have scientific explanations, and he's working his way through that. So I want more of that. And that is not a final thought, it's a first thought of my first impressions. Otherwise, another grand first impression I've got here, I talked in our last episode about how David Lynch is demonizing women in a lot of ways. The misogyny is rampant, and how when something goes wrong in a relationship, it is always the woman's fault. Well, clearly, here, it's meant to imply that Lucy had an affair. But we know that Lucy and Andy were broken up when she went to see hanging out with Dick Tremaine. And so, why is Lucy having to carry all of this emotional labor for Dick Tremaine and Andy, right? It's almost like with a female director, Lucy is treated better than she is with a male director. And there aren't as many female directors in this season as I would like to see. But we'll look for that next time Leslie is directing, to see if Lucy's characterization gets better when she's A, got allies in the writer's room, which means women, and B, when there's a director who's willing to spend the time to talk about women. Mind you, that same director had Jacoby's wife say 5 words. Yeah. So the new characters, I quite like them, or at least 2 of them. And our renewed Albert Roosevelt, I like him. And we'll talk a little bit more about some of our plotting in expanded coverage.
In this section, we'll talk about the greater universe and mythology of the piece, any cool personal takeaways, and also tie the media in to the greater works of the artist.
All right. Expanded coverage. There's a lot to talk about in this episode, a lot to unpack. Part of which is it's a new director and a new writer, but we get some serious plot development in this episode with the addition of Jean Renault and the fact that Blackie has a sister, which is, I don't think we knew that before without our reading of Field, right? It's not brought up that Blackie had any sort of family whatsoever. But Jean Reno is a dangerous dude who does dangerous things. And now we're whacking Audrey up with heroin, which is bad, because that's how Blackie started. Talked a little
That's
about
a pretty
this.
serious
It's
thing.
pretty serious, because not everybody reacts to wear heroin the same way, or opioids the same way. Some people are instantly hooked, and some people can take like 4 or 5 shots a day and just maintain it and be.
You can actually kill somebody by just giving them heroin all willy-nilly.
Yep. And
I mean, especially if there's someone who's never had any before, like they won't have any resistance to it.
yeah, I mean, Jean is planning to kill her. He said as much, that we can't let her live, and you can't give her back. So she's gonna die of a heroin overdose and be dumped out in the stream somewhere. And that would probably have been Laura's fate if she hadn't been beaten to death by Bob. But it's definitely shaping up to be Audrey's fate. But when she has a lucid moment, she's crying to herself in her bed, who does she cry out for? Special Agent
Cooper.
Special Agent Cooper.
The fact that
Please
she
hear me.
prays to him,
Yeah.
like literally prays to him, makes me laugh so much.
Yeah, and then we see that fucking note still sitting under the bed. So you have
I
forgotten
mean, he's
something.
been a little busy. He got
He's-
shot and everything.
Yeah, 3 in the chest. 3 in the chest. Ben Horn, worst father of the year of all time, possibly the 90s. Certainly, with one notable exception, which we'll cover later in the season. Worst father in Twin Peaks. The rest of the Horn family conspicuously absent in this episode. Don't see Jerry. Don't see Mom Horn. We don't see the brother, who may have been written out at this point. I forget. Without him grieving audibly for Laura. So we just have Ben and occasionally Jerry. And he goes, yeah, Audrey's taken off before. She'll come back. But, stay away from my daughter. It's like, what the fuck do you care? Right? You are not winning any awards by scaring off the one person in Twin Peaks who actually cares about your daughter by saying, stay away from her. And Dale says, hey. What? I don't think Dale ever punches anybody. But he looked like he might have wanted to there. Simply by the vehemence of Ben's reaction. And that bothered me. But then again, Ben's going to go slightly mad soon. So I'm waiting for that to happen. Bobby Briggs, waste of human space, is now enjoining Shelley to commit a major felony, tax fraud. Dale Cooper knows it. Dale Cooper may or may not know they're sleeping together. Julie thinks he does, because Dale Cooper can figure out anybody's sleeping with anybody just by looking at him, apparently. Which gives me hope that Albert is actually gay. Who knows?
To me, he gives asexual vibes.
Yeah, he is definitely ace.
I mean that's more what I get from him. And it's interesting because even though he's been a snarky and mean person the entire time, it is interesting once you find out his philosophy to notice that he's extremely verbally aggressive, but not physically aggressive.
Yeah.
So it seems that perhaps his own personal way of interpreting, the way of nonviolence still allows for verbal violence. And I would say that's not a good interpretation, but he didn't ask me, so
Yeah, he did not.
yeah. No, I think that being a jerk to people, but not hitting them, like it doesn't necessarily, you're not really off the hook if you abuse people verbally to the point where they want to beat up on you.
Yeah.
Even if you're not going to hit back. I feel like, dude, your nonviolence is not actually working out for you when you're this much of a jerk about it. I don't know.
Just lost the thing I want to talk about. All right. We have a pseudo returning cast member in this episode. Because come on, do the thing. Do the thing. Stupid website. So Ian Buchanan, who plays Dick Tremaine, was supposed to play the role that Dean Stockwell did in Blue Velvet. He was just simply unavailable at the time. And you could definitely see the physical resemblance between those two actors all the way in there. But Dean Stockwell got the nod because Dean Stockwell, David Lynch had worked with him before in Dune. But it's one of those bits where I think if Dean Stockwell wasn't doing Quantum Leap, he might have got the nod for the character of Dick Tremaine. But maybe he also just didn't want to do that character because Dean Stockwell is a former Disney child actor. And he had a certain, even though he played a murderous traitor in Dune, he didn't play the dick. Like Dick Tremaine, who is just kind of all over the place. And we're going to see him in a lot of episodes of season 2. He's a main cast member now. He's not going to be in every episode, but he's going to be a major part of Lucy's life and Andy's life. And things that happen in this season with Dick Tremaine echo forward into Twin Peaks: The Return. So keep your eye on that guy. But, you know, he's a dick. He's a sleazeball. And we don't like him so much. We like Andy a lot. Andy doesn't have a lot to do in this episode, which I thought was very sad because other than be sad, it's mainly...
And not get punched.
And not get punched. Well, it was Harry. But, I mean, he didn't punch Andy either. Andy punched himself in the last episode. So that was with a porch. And then Shelley, like I said, she's committing a major felony here. And it doesn't compare anything to when she tried to kill Leo in self-defense, but tried to kill him. And then when she tried to get Bobby to kill Leo. So in the grand scheme of things, insurance scam is nowhere near attempted murder and crimes that can be laid at Shelley Johnson's feet. But it's up there. It's a thing. And it's hard to remember that Shelley is 18, right? She is a kid. She is barely more than a child who had to grow up really fast when she married Leo. And she's doing childish things and making childish mistakes. And, I'll cut Bobby a tiny bit of slack. His brain's not finished growing yet. He's a kid. He doesn't know shit. And he sees, X amount of dollars a month. That means I can eat pizza every night. Or, pay someone to buy me beer. Right? I can do all these things that normal teenagers can't if we just, pretend that Leo's being taken care of and get his disability money. And that's bad news. That relationship is going nowhere. It's built on lies, and the sooner it ends, the better. I also like that kid detectives were explicitly mentioned in this episode and told, don't be a kid detective. Don't do this, James.
It's almost like they heard our podcast somehow. Our podcast reached back in time.
It echoed back 35 years, and then they heard this happen. Because we see almost immediately after that conversation, the very real problems of being a kid detective, Audrey Horne. You are being held prisoner in a brothel owned by your father, and you're whacked up on heroin by people who don't give one shit about you. Not alone two shits, but they don't give one shit. You are going to die soon. So please pray to Agent Cooper. He can't hear you. But pray anyway, because it might give you hope. And there's, you kind of hope that she'll save herself the way she saved herself before, but now she's whacked up on heroin and she's tied to a bed. It's not gonna end well for anybody. Certainly not going to end well for Emery, because that guy's going to get whacked by Jean Renault too. I don't think he's got a future in the horn hospitality business.
No.
Right. And the grand criminal empire of the Renault brothers is very interesting because they are above the border. They're kind of a big deal all the way around, even though the Renaults we've seen up to this point are buffoons. Now they're
The
horrible
lawless
buffoons.
land of Canada.
The lawless land of Canada, which is not like
where
any Canadians that I
criminals-
knew in the 90s. And we knew a lot of the same Canadians in the 90s, and they weren't like these guys.
No.
These guys are bad news from a bad place. It's like Canada's sending their worst people down here. Rapists and drug dealers and murderers. We got to defend our northern border against that country massing 90% of its population within 100 miles of our northern border. They're coming for us. They invaded us once before and burned down the White House. They could do it again. Probably will. You never know. All right, but other than those bits of plot, more or less an empty episode. Tiny bits of movement are all there. It's mainly the revelations about Lucy and Dick Tremaine and the backstory of Jean Renault, how everything's going over, except for our friend Leland Palmer. We talked last episode about Leland, his revelation that he knows Bob. He knew Bob as a child, and Bob used to torment him as a child. And Hawk goes and verifies Leland's story that there is a White House up by a lake. It's all boarded up. We don't know who lives there. The Robertsons live there. Or lived there. We're not sure what the overall relationship is, what things are going to happen all the way in here, but that's kind of a big deal. And then Jacoby remembering that Leland strangled him, a huge deal, a giant deal. Or is that what? No, you remember the Jock strangled him, and then Harry arrests Leland for killing Jacques, and it's boom. Now he's in prison, and it's like, wow, that's a big deal. So it's a big surprise twist at the end of the episode that I didn't see coming. It wasn't there. I thought he was going to go down for a much greater crime than that one, killing some Canadian nobody gives a shit about. But it's a thing. It's a bit. So hoping that these things are going to pay off later on. But the one-armed man is somebody we should probably talk about, because Harry says, I'd like to see your boots sometime. And they are A, looking for a boot print that matches the one they found at Leo's place. And B, why are you around here? Why are you still sticking around? And so when the one-armed man, Gerard, sees the picture of Bob, he freaks out, goes to the bathroom, and starts to shoot himself with medicine, which he doesn't actually get to do. And then he has a seizure of some sort, starts talking to the walls, and then disappears. And I think he disappeared for real. I don't think he snuck out of the police station, the sheriff's station. I think he popped into the lodge, because the drugs he was taking to keep him from popping into the lodge wore off. And he's just gone for a while. He went zoom into the other universe. If it was Twin Peaks: The Return, there would be a pile of stinking puke on the floor that would signal something moving from dimension to dimension. But it's just bam, gone. And that's kind of spooky. It's the most Lynchian thing that happened in this episode, is the absolute freak out and disappearance of Gerard, the one-armed man. Because what kind of medicine did he have to take like that? Now, if you're having a seizure, you don't give yourself a shot. You take a pill. Somebody else gives you a shot. And you certainly don't go into the bathroom to do that. You say, I need to take my medicine, and you take your medicine right there. You don't wander off and hope you don't get caught. So maybe he was actually taking heroin. Maybe that's drugs, and not medicinal drugs. But we won't know for an episode or two, when people remember that, oh yeah, there's another character that we haven't accounted for. And that's most of our expanded coverage that I can think of.
I had not made the connection that maybe his the medicine he takes is to keep him from going back to the Black Lodge.
Yeah.
That had never occurred to me, but it does fit what we see. And that's actually an aspect of Twin Peaks getting increasingly, I would say, fantastical in the second season, which I don't like it getting increasingly cartoony, but I do like that there's more things that are not explainable through purely the real world, such as, Cooper's missing ring, things like that. And, the fact that people can just disappear,
Mm-hmm. Or
locked room
corn.
mysteries, or creamed corn.
Well, we've seen the international pilot, right? And U.S. audiences had not seen the international pilot unless they were very lucky, or they had somehow been in England when this had happened. And so, knowing how ardently the Queen was watching Twin Peaks is kind of going to be interesting to wonder what the Queen's reaction was to this episode, because they had seen the one-armed man confess that he and Bob had a relationship and they would do things together, and he had rejected that life but had to kept drawn back into it. And the one-armed man is the one who speaks the line, "Come fire walk with me," in the pilot, right? Bob doesn't have lines, he just screams at you until the end when he goes, "Yeah," and they're forced to shoot him. But we know a lot more about the one-armed man based on his presence in the international pilot and the original parts of the dream sequence that are slowly being doled out to us 10 episodes later, 11 episodes later now, as you count them, for that character. And, when he pops up again, I'm wanting consequences. I want somebody somewhere to say, "Hey, didn't you go to the bathroom?" Or, "Why are you wearing Dale Cooper's ring?" Or something kooky that's going to show us that something's not quite right with that guy. Other than, which mild spoiler in the expanded universe, isn't the tree, the arm that he cut off, the tattoo, and it grew in the lodge, in the red room, rather?
I think so.
Yeah, it's like Gerard's arm lives on in another dimension, and it's wacky, it's kooky. Julie, we're talking about fantastical bits. Break down some Lynchian tropes for us.
Oh, let's see. Well, I would say that weirdos.
It's always weirdos.
World full of weirdos. That I think that's the number one Lynchian trope that struck me this time. Also, nobody's normal about sex.
Nope.
Let's see. Also, this is a trope that I haven't identified before, but I think since we were talking about the Renault criminal empire, I realized that the way David Lynch portrays people doing crimes and things like that, he portrays criminal empires in a very, I want to say, old-fashioned kind of way. Like, they end up feeling very, I don't know, like 1930s noir or something. Like, they don't seem all that informed by modernity in terms of what they do or how they do it. That is, if in a David Lynch film, if a gangster comes at you, he's going to be a gangster who would fit very comfortably into like a 1950s gangster film.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that fits with the twin, with the David Lynch overall trope of everything kind of existing on that line between, where the 50s meets the 80s. He keeps that aesthetic for pretty much his entire, his earliest films have it, or I would say The earliest film that has it is Blue Velvet, where it's really obvious that it's got that 50s meets 80s aesthetic, but he kind of kept that aesthetic going. You know, like you can still see it as late as, you know, Mulholland Drive. Um, but I guess because he does tend to work in a noir um, format, you know, that's a very common sort of, you know, everything takes place in like a noir universe. I feel that pointing out that specifically the criminality is very old-fashioned noir is worth pointing out. Like people aren't addition people don't get addicted to meth. They're addicted to heroin.
Mhm.
You know.
Uh,
Um
I realized that we didn't expressly name the actor who plays Toad Smith. It's an actor called Lenny Van Dolen. We will see him again in Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me as the same character. So he's not quite a recurring cast member until that happens, but we will see him again. And then, you know, of course, throughout season 2. But you'll see him. He died in 2022, but he had a very, very long television career, doing parts as early as 1981 and as late as 2010. So
not a recurring cast member because we never see Jacoby's wife again.
right.
But the actress who plays her, Jenny Aquino, also had a very long television career.
She
Like,
did.
you know, basically from right, you know, before Twin Peaks to like last year.
Yeah.
So it continues.
All right. Since we covered so much of the important stuff last episode that goes over this one, we're about ready to move on to final thoughts, but let's check in with our important segment. What's going on with Leland Palmer? So, what do you think is going on with Leland Palmer? Without your actual knowledge, but based on this episode, what is going on with Leland Palmer?
That is actually a very interesting question because in the season 2 pilot, he's clearly losing his mind. But in episodes, you know, the second and third episodes of season 2, he's holding it together a little bit more. He's acting a little more normal when he tells you about how he recognizes the drawing of Bob. Oh, we do that. I don't know if we talked about that, but because for some reason in all of the online wiki stuff, Bob is all caps.
All
It's always
caps.
all caps.
Yeah.
And I'm not quite sure why. I don't know.
I
We'll
think it's
get to
because
it.
it's not his name. It's simply a thing.
Yeah, okay. So anyway, when he says that he recognizes the drawing as a man who used to flick matches at him when he was a little boy, um, I I don't think it was obvious that, you know, it seemed sort of normal for David, more or less normal. Like I think uh we were inclined to take it at face value. That maybe there was some connection, you know, this Bob, you know, might be somebody Leland knew in an earlier life. Although I will say that among the group of people who watched this, you know, those of us who watched it, um we were always we found Leland pretty sketchy right from the start, and we're inclined to think that you really couldn't believe anything he said. So,
Yeah, it could all be
um,
a grand charade
a
he's
grand
playing on us
charade.
because no one was living at that house, right? Hawk went there off screen. Off screen saw it was boarded up, and only that there was a house, so he could have just driven by and said, "Oh, a house." and then left it at that. We don't see Sarah Palmer in this episode, so it's kind of light on supporting cast all the way around. You know, Josie calls in from off screen. Catherine Martell is gone. We don't check in with our other Martells, so things are just weird.
Well, they needed time to introduce us to the 4 new characters.
4 new characters, 3 of which we'll see again.
3 of which we'll see again.
All right. I think we're about ready to move on to our final thoughts.
In final thoughts, we share the important things we want people to take away from this week's show and anything we just really have to get off our chests that didn't fit into any of the other sections.
Final thoughts. Julie had some great ones before I turn the camera back on, so let's see if she remembers them.
You mean the Harold Smith?
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Okay, yeah, just that that of all of the new directions that are introduced in this episode, you know, the new plot elements that are dropped in, he's my favorite. Appealing actor and very intriguing story. It implies there's kind of a depth there. It's like, you know, you really wondering like, ooh, why is he scared to go outside? And the visuals of the fact that he lives surrounded by orchids is very nice.
An notoriously fragile flower which can only survive in a certain environment. It's a metaphor for himself. And that's kind of what agoraphobics do, so yay.
My least favorite of the ongoing stories that is introduced in this episode is the super strong Nadine who thinks she's in high school.
Yep. Yeah, we're not done with that. We're gonna see that some more.
Yeah.
And we've seen Nadine be freakishly strong before, but we haven't seen her breaking restraints through heavy sedation before. And we didn't really see it in this episode. It just they tell us it happened, and then we see her kind of pull herself together because Ed is nearby, so she's driven by some need to get to Ed. Which, you know, Ed's a good-looking guy. I can see that. But high school Ed was kind of a dick who ran around on Norma and treated everybody badly. So hopefully he doesn't regress either.
And he does see himself as atoning. Like,
yeah.
He definitely gives off that, I live a life I hate because I'm atoning for the sins of the past. He gives that vibe pretty well.
And I don't think he's going to go up on the cross for it, but he's definitely sad she lost her eye. I don't think that's 20 years of marriage sad, but it's if he didn't have any feelings for Nadine, he would have been gone because Norma was right there. And despite, you know, her homicidal husband, if he didn't have any feelings for Nadine, he wouldn't have cared so much about her feelings and treated Norma like dirt. And Norma was right to dump him. So we'll see what's going on with that. But that's one of my final thoughts is I'm tired of the demonization of women. I'm tired of it. It's been 2 episodes now where everything is a woman's fault, and I'm fucking tired of it. So we had 15 more episodes of season 2. Hopefully, at some point, we won't have that anymore. And I know exactly when that point is, the introduction of my 3rd least favorite character, of Annie Blackburn. When we finally have a positive female role model who has not been destroyed by Twin Peaks. But we'll get to her replacement Audrey when we get there. And then this episode left me wanting to watch more Twin Peaks. Every time I think about this episode, I think about the episode that comes after it. I want to watch that episode. I want to watch the episode that comes after that. So it does its job in bridging from the high concept David Lynch stuff to the middle of the road vanilla ice cream Twin Peaks, which is the rest of this season, and is quite palatable because vanilla ice cream still has sugar in it. It's still ice cream. And so you still want it. And you can't have it for breakfast every day. Some days, but not every day. But you should be able to have it every day when you want to have it. So Twin Peaks is like that. Twin Peaks is like a scoop of ice cream. I think Dave would appreciate that metaphor. You can eat it, not for every meal, but you should have it whenever you want it.
Scoop of ice cream dropped into an espresso.
Dropped in espresso and slathered with cherry pie filling. Yum, yum. That sounds like what I want for breakfast. Yeah, let's go do that. All right. Julie, where can people find you online?
You can find me as McJulie on most social media and at gothhouse.org. And you can find my books at Eris Entertainment.
Oh, you can find my books at Eris Entertainment too, because Eris Entertainment
What a coincidence.
is a sponsor of this webcast, of course, because why not? And we'll talk about that a little more after our outro, but it's a great place to buy books that focus on independent authors and creators like Dave Lynch here. Dave Lynch, gotta remember, he's that way.
No.
Yeah, he's one of these ways.
David.
Like David Lynch. #1, Dave Lynch. And I'll explain how that works afterwards. But what's next for us will be episode 11, Laura's Secret Diary. The 4th episode of Twin Peaks Season 2, 12th episode overall. Written by Jerry Stahl, Mark Frost, Harley Payton, and Robert Engels. So continuity for what we've seen before. And directed by Todd Holland, whom we have not seen before. And it's going to be an interesting episode. As the ratings go down, the plots get better. But we'll talk about that next time on So Here's the Deal. Goodbye, everybody.